How's it going, folks? This is Mike, and I'm here to take part in a project that a couple of my friends have been doing. DVD Collector 1974, James, and Forkerball, Ian. They've been doing their top 100 films, doing 25 at a time for each video. And James invited me to do this back in December, and I was thinking about doing it, but then a week before Christmas, I got sick. I was sick all the way through Christmas and up in the New Year's. At Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, I was in bed sleeping. I only got up to get food. So I didn't, it was a lot of work to put all these films together, and I just didn't get around to doing it. But now, with apologies to both James and Ian for not starting this sooner, I would like to take part, even though they're almost finished. I think by next week they'll be all done. So I'm just beginning. So anyway, here we go. My top 100 films. Oh, by the way, just to make sure, I'm not trying to do an American Film Institute type list of the greatest classic films ever made. This is all personal, all subjective. So you'll see a lot of stuff on my list that the American Film Institute would probably not even consider. But there might be one or two that are on that list that end up on mine. So anyway, here we go. Coming in at number 100, this is a film called The Way, which came out a few years ago. I'm not sure what year. Written and directed by Emilio Estevez and starring his father, Martin Sheen. It's a story about, Martin Sheen plays an American doctor named Tom, who is very cynical and estranged from his son, who is played by Emilio Estevez. And at the beginning of the film, he finds out that his son has died in France. At the beginning, he was taking part in this ancient Christian pilgrimage called the Way of St. James. In Spanish, the name is El Camino de Santiago de Compostela. It goes from a certain place in France, and then people just walk all the way across the Pyrenees and through the countryside, through towns, until they get to a place in Spain called Compostela at the Cathedral of St. James. So this is something that's been going on for over 1,000 years. And while Tom is in France claiming his son's body, he gets an inspiration to take this pilgrimage himself in honor of his son, and to take his son's ashes and sort of distribute them at a point after the finishing of the pilgrimage. And this is a man who is very much a lapsed Catholic, has no idea what he believes anymore, and his life changes as he takes this route. He meets a fascinating group of people, all of whom are taking the pilgrimage for their own reasons, and it's just a brilliant film. Actually filmed on location in France and Spain and at the cathedral in Spain. So, all right, that's my number 100. Number 99 is a film called Following. Sorry for the glare. I have a very bright TV room. Everything kind of glows when I make these videos. I'm probably glowing too. At least I hope so. Okay, this is called Following, and I can't remember the date this was made either, but it's not that old. But anyway, Christopher Nolan's first feature film. Fascinating little black and white masterpiece where a guy living in London who was trying to become a writer starts following people around the city just to watch them and observe what they do, where they go, how they act, to get inspiration for writing stories and developing characters. And one of the people he follows, this young guy, this guy notices that the writer is following him, so he approaches him. They form this bizarre partnership where they start going into people's homes and just seeing how they live and stealing stuff. And so the writer becomes more obsessed with what this other guy's been doing, and it just gets caught up in this strange game. And the way it's filmed, it's not filmed, or at least it's not presented in linear fashion. The story starts out sort of in a midpoint, and it shows you a scene, and then it shows you another scene. You can't understand how these things fit together until you get to the end of the film, and then you realize there's a lot more going on than the writer was aware of. So it's a fascinating movie. Okay, coming in at number 98. Let's see, I'll get my, all right, this is Judgment at Nuremberg, directed by Stanley Kramer, 1961, all about the Nuremberg trials after World War II, trying to bring the Nazi criminals to justice. Great cast of actors: Spencer Tracy, Burt Lancaster, Richard Widmark, Marlene Dietrich, Judy Garland, Maximilian Schell, Montgomery Clift, and a very small part by William Shatner. I think this was his very first film. Absolutely fascinating movie. Okay, this is a Japanese horror film called Pulse, also known by its original Japanese name of Kairo, Kairo, which I've talked about in other videos. This is the one that really got me turned on to watching Japanese horror films. Just a fascinating, haunting, beautiful imagery in this film about people living in contemporary Tokyo, and people just start to disappear, and then their images, their ghosts, are visible through computer screens. It's very, very strange, but very, very beautiful to watch, and scary too. Next up is a film called Love Streams, directed by John Cassavetes, also written by him. He stars along with his wife Gena Rowlands in this. In this film, they play a brother and sister, both of whom are incredibly messed up with relationships, marriages, just all sorts of things. And it's one of the most heart-wrenching and difficult films that I've ever seen. But it's so worthwhile just to see the way these people, just to see how they relate to their loved ones, and is very much dialogue-oriented. But yeah, I love this movie. Highly recommended. Just recently came out on Criterion. Next up is a great film called Stranger Than Fiction, which is only a couple, not that old really. Will Ferrell, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Dustin Hoffman, Queen Latifah, and Emma Thompson, in a story about a guy who comes to realize that his life it has a narration. He starts hearing a woman's voice narrating his life, exactly what he's doing at any time and place. And he finds out that he's not only is he a real person who's living, but he's also a character in a novel that's in the progress of being written by Emma Thompson. Now the problem with this is Emma Thompson, the author, has a habit of always killing off the protagonist of her book. So this guy comes to realize that if she doesn't change what she's writing, he's going to die. It's very, very strange, very funny, but very, very clever. Very well put together movie. Next up, this is a classic film noir from 1945 called Mildred Pierce, which is also a perfect vehicle for Joan Crawford, who won an Academy Award for this, about a woman who, based on a novel by James Cain, and they changed a lot for the film because they had to. At the time, it couldn't be filmed as the way the book was written. But Joan Crawford plays a woman who is involved in an unhappy marriage. She has 2 daughters, and her only goal in life is to succeed at something and make money so that she can give her children anything they want. Well, her younger daughter dies, so she focuses all of her love and her dreams on her older daughter, Vita, played by Anne Blythe, in a terrific performance. And it's just so Mildred Pierce she first starts working at a restaurant, then she comes to be the owner of a restaurant, and then a chain of restaurants, and her life gets all messed up in an incredible soap opera. But it's beautifully photographed and very well acted by everybody concerned. Okay, next up is a classic Western called Shane, starring Alan Ladd, Jean Arthur, Van Heflin. I actually saw this movie last night at a local theater, and I had not seen it since I was a kid, although I bought the DVD a while ago, and I still haven't sat down to watch it. But just a classic Western, and the character of Shane just sort of appears out of nowhere to help this family. Van Heflin, his wife, Jean Arthur, and their little boy, played by Brandon DeWild, who they start kind of taking him into their family, and he gets involved in their problems because they are farmers in an area where these very powerful cattle ranchers don't want anybody farming, so they're trying to drive everybody away. So Shane decides to help these farmers, and he gets involved in all of their problems, and he's very much like a kind of a savior, kind of a Christ-like figure. And it's a beautiful film, okay, in color, directed by George Stevens. Okay, the next film up, directed by Douglas Sirk. This is called Imitation of Life, pure soap opera from 1959. Lana Turner, John Gavin, Sandra Dee, who else is in it? Juanita Moore, Susan Kohner, Robert Alda, and Dan O'Herlihy. Now, this is about Lana Turner plays an actress who comes from very humble beginnings, has a young daughter, and she's trying to make it as an actress, and she's had no experience. Well, other than a little theater, and then she gets involved with this a woman named Annie, played by Juanita Moore, who also has a young daughter, and these two people become friends, and they decide to live together. And Annie, being a black woman living in America in the 1950s, takes a subservient role as the housekeeper and the raiser of the two daughters, while Lana Turner goes out and becomes a famous actress. And it's about all the relationships between these women, especially between the women and their daughters, and all the things that are happening. Susan Conner plays a young woman who is so light-skinned that she can pass for white, and she wants to, because she can see how different it is when people perceive her as being black and than it is when she's perceived as being white. So of course, what she wants to do is breaking her mother's heart. And this was made not that long after Lana Turner had been involved in a scandal with her own teenage daughter. Her daughter, Cheryl Crane, had stabbed Lana Turner's boyfriend one night. She stabbed him and killed him because she thought this man was trying to kill her mother. It was a big, big scandal in Hollywood, and the girl ended up being acquitted, but Lana Turner thought that it was going to ruin her career. So the first thing she gets offered to do is a story about a mother with a conflict with her teenage daughter, played by Sandra Dee. Very, very good film. Okay. Next up, Horror of Dracula from 1958. This is the remake of Dracula, which in America is called Horror of Dracula because of some weird conflict with Universal Studios. But Christopher Lee takes the role of Dracula, does it beautifully, supported by Peter Cushing, who plays Van Helsing, and it's beautiful color. Yeah, classic film. Absolutely love it. Another great horror film that I love, Carnival of Souls from the year 1962. Low budget, black and white, very creepy, very strange movie about life and death, people who don't know they're dead. What does that remind you of? And very well done. Okay, also out on Criterion. Next up is a film by Woody Allen called Match Point, which came out just a few years ago. It stars, let me see, who are these people? It has Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, Scarlett Johansson, Brian Cox, Matthew Good. The only actor I'm really familiar with in this at all is Scarlett Johansson, but it's about a young man living in England who is a tennis pro, and he gets involved with one of his clients. They become friends, and through this friend, he becomes involved with that family, a very upper class, wealthy family. They kind of take him in, and he's the ultimate social climber. And he gets involved with the daughter of this family, who loves him very much. The only problem is his first friend, the client, who was taking tennis lessons, has a very sexy American girlfriend played by Scarlett Johansson. And this guy cannot keep his hands off of her. So all kinds of rather tragic consequences. It's very well written. Woody Allen does not appear in this film. It's one of his serious films. It's just very, very clever, very well done. The next film is a John Cassavetes film called Shadows. The first feature film that he ever did back in the 1950s, made over a period of a couple of years actually, and it's very crude and very amateurish, but I find it very compelling. It's a story, once again, it's a story about a couple of black people who are so light-skinned, they're probably mixed race, that they can pass for white, and all the problems that are caused by their choices. And the only actress who's very fairly well known in this is the lead actress Lelia Goldoni, who went on to have a very interesting career, and I just find it fascinating. I love it. Okay, now on to, this is an English film called Morris, which came out in the 1980s. It stars James Wilby and Hugh Grant and Rupert Graves. This is from a novel, based on a novel by E.M. Forster, and it was not published until after Forster was deceased. And it takes place in the Edwardian period of England. And these two men meet at, I can't remember now if it's Oxford or Cambridge, one of the great universities. They become very good friends. They fall in love with each other. These guys are both homosexual in a time when, if one is found to be gay, they probably wouldn't have used that word back then, you can be arrested, thrown into prison, and your entire life, your entire reputation will be ruined forever. So they try to hide their feelings, and they try to hide their relationship, and one of them decides to take the route of getting married and living a conventional life and trying to put all of these feelings behind him, and the other one is not able to do that. So it's a very brilliantly acted and well-written film. The next film is another Western that I like very much called The Unforgiven from the year 1960. It's directed by John Huston. It stars Burt Lancaster, Audrey Hepburn, Audie Murphy, and Charles Bickford and Lillian Gish. it has all the ambiance of a Western, but it really is about uh, the secrets kept within this family, where Audrey Hepburn plays a young girl who is either adopted into this family or is the biological daughter of this family, Lillian Gish being the mother. And it's as the secrets this family has been keeping are revealed, it's found out that she is actually an Indian who was brought into the family after an Indian massacre. She was the last survivor and brought her to Lillian Gish, who had just lost her own daughter. And it's a very, very dramatic and very well written and acted film. Okay, next up is a film I've talked about many, many times. Classic silent film called Pandora's Box, made in Germany by G.W. Pabst in 1929, starring the beautiful and very talented Louise Brooks, in a film that kind of takes into consideration the decadent time in that period of German history. And interestingly enough, the next film I'm choosing, which is a musical called Cabaret, this Liza Minnelli based the way she looked in this film on the appearance of Louise Brooks with the black hair and all that, the way it was cut. And this is a film that redefined the Hollywood musical, and they did everything right in this movie. A very, very dark story, pretty much about the same period of time that the story of Pandora's Box takes place, the late 20s, early 1930s, the period before Hitler. Well, Hitler was coming into power at the time. The Nazis were starting to rise. Berlin was very, very decadent. That's shown beautifully in this movie. And Liza Minnelli plays a woman named Sally Bowles, who is somewhat musically talented, but living in a dream world that she might be a star someday. And it's directed by Bob Fosse. A lot of Academy Awards. Liza was Best Actress. Great musical performances. The next film is from Martin Scorsese. This is Goodfellas. Goodfellas with Robert De Niro, Ray Liotta, Joe Pesci. A film I only saw just about a year ago, not knowing what to expect, and it's one of the most brilliant things ever made. I mean, it really does. It exposes the underside, the ugliness of the gangster, the mob life, the mafia, and all that stuff. Very well acted by everybody concerned. The next film, another Joan Crawford movie, and I picked this because not only is it a great performance by Joan Crawford, but also a perfect example of film noir. From 1947, Possessed, also starring Van Heflin. Just extremely well acted. Joan Crawford lets herself be completely unglamorized for this movie, and it's perfect. Beautiful black and white cinematography. All right, the next film is La Dolce Vita, directed by Federico Fellini in 1960, starring Marcello Mastroianni, Anita Ekberg, and Anouk Ami. This is just an amazing film that has to do with the rise of celebrity culture in Italy back in the late 1950s, early 1960s, and the celebrities who just live as celebrities, much like they do today. This is a very, very prescient film. And it's beautiful to look at. A film you can watch many, many times and see new things in it every time you see it. The next film is from this box set called Dark Crimes, and it's a film noir from 1945 from Universal Pictures called Phantom Ladies, the one right in the center. A very low budget, kind of an experimental film directed by Robert Siodmak, starring Ella Raines, Francho Tone, and Alan Curtis, in a mystery story about a man who was accused of killing his wife, and his only alibi is that he was spending the evening at a concert with another woman, a woman he didn't really know, and he didn't know her name. He had just met her in a bar, and they went out together. And she is his alibi, but nobody can find her. So she is the Phantom Lady. And Ella Raines plays the man's secretary, who also is in love with him, and she goes out into the night, out into his world, trying to retrace his footsteps, trying to find that woman and help him get out of prison. Next film is another one by Christopher Nolan called Memento. This is a film that just about everybody likes. It's filmed backwards, or I should say it's presented backwards, the story. Guy Pearce plays a guy who has lost his short-term memory. He is trying to find the man who killed his wife, and he eventually does. Beautiful film. Okay. The next film, this is another Martin Sheen film. It's called Catholics, which was a TV film in the 1970s. This is the VHS version, which I've had for a long time. And it's also put out on DVD. And for some reason, they changed the name to The Conflict. I have no idea what that's about. But it's about, it takes place off into the future when the Catholic Church is even in worse shape than it is now. And there is a group of Irish monks who are still saying the Latin Mass, and they're doing it out in an open field, and they do it on a rock, what they call the Mass rock, which is something that Irish priests used to do back in the days where they were living under persecution. And there are a lot of people following these monks, and they attend the Latin Mass because they don't like the things that are happening in the modern day church. So it's a kind of a very quiet religious rebellion. So Martin Sheen plays a priest, very much progressive priest, who is sent by the Vatican to go and stop these priests from saying the Mass in Latin and to start doing everything in the modern way. So it involves all the conflicts that these people have with each other. And Trevor Howard is also one of the stars, and he is the leader of the monastery, and it shows not only the interaction between these two priests, but their questions about faith. It's a fascinating, very interesting movie. Okay, this is a film by Woody Allen called Interiors from 1978, the first serious film that Woody Allen ever made, and it doesn't get a lot of love. It didn't get a lot of good criticism at the time, and a lot of people think it's very shallow, and that he's doing a very poor imitation of Ingmar Bergman. But I actually like it. I think it's beautiful to look at, and it's very hypnotic and compelling. Diane Keaton, Mary Beth Hurt, E.G. Marshall, Geraldine Page, Sam Waterston, Maureen Stapleton, a whole bunch of people. Very good film. And finally, this is a great American film from 1961 called Days of Wine and Roses, starring Jack Lemmon and Lee Remick, playing a married couple who are both caught up in alcoholism. It destroys their lives, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful, and very sad film to watch. Great performances by both the people. Charles Bickford is also in it, and Jack Klugman is also in it, and it's directed by Blake Edwards. It also happens to have beautiful music by Henry Mancini, so it's a classic American film. So this has gone on way too long. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back with the next 25. Take care.